Hello and welcome to a very special episode of To The Point. Why does the Congress party think the budget is a damp squib and disappointing? Why is it dismissive of Mr. Jaitley's efforts to reduce taxation, encourage investment, and of course to clean up political funding? Those are three of the issues I shall raise today with former Finance Minister P. Chidambaram. This is Mr. Chidambaram's first interview on the budget. Mr. Chidambaram, you've called the budget a damp squib. You said you're disappointed. Did you make that comment as an opposition leader who's required to be critical, or as a former finance minister who's aiming to be analytical?
If I intended to be only critical, why would I answer a question where a person asked me, can you list some positives of the budget? And I did. So my purpose is not to be critical or to oppose for the sake of opposing. I had done a thorough analysis within the limited time available to me, and I had come to the conclusion that this budget was not advancing the economic objectives of the country, or the economic objectives of the country should have at this moment.
I want very much to take up the 10 critical points you made against the budget in your critique. But first, let me put two questions to you. In contrast to your opinion, Montek Singh Ahluwalia has praised the budget. Writing in Mint, he says, the big picture is that there is much that is sensible in the budget. I take it you disagree with Mr. Ahluwalia.
I have not read the article, but in every budget, if you write 37 pages, 184 paragraphs, there will be something which is sensible.
In other words, something sensible is not enough to be praiseworthy, because in 37 pages, there's bound to be something sensible.
Yes, because you have to measure what was delivered against objectives that you must set for yourself.
One more question before I come to your detailed critique. Now, this budget is based upon the advance estimates of the CSO, but this year, unlike previous years, those advance estimates are only accurate up till October, not for the first 3 quarters of the year. Secondly, that means they haven't taken on board the impact of demonetization on the economy. So how reliable are the figures in the budget?
I think that is a deliberate obfuscation. They had only, which is 1 month less than data available to any finance minister. If you present the budget on the 28th of February, you had data up to say about the 15th of February. If you present the budget on the 1st of February, you have data up to the 15th of January. So I think the absence of data for 1 month compared to previous years does not mean they should not make a reasonable estimate of what the year end will look like. For example, look at their projection of revenues. Corporation tax. Budget estimate for 2016-17 and the revised estimate are the exact same number to the last digit. Income tax. Budget estimate, revised estimate, exact same number to the last digit. Now, you're not willing to say whether you will collect 1 rupee more or 1 rupee less. I mean, that is, to me, amazing.
This is laxity or irresponsibility or something worse?
Obfuscation.
Deliberate obfuscation.
Yes.
A government...
I think they know enough to make a projection. They deliberately did not do that.
That suggests that they're actually hiding something.
Well, that we'll have to wait to see the actuals. I mean, the actuals could turn out to be very different. I can't say what they are hiding. They're perhaps hiding good news. They're perhaps hiding bad news.
But deliberate obfuscation it is.
Well, I use the phrase deliberate obfuscation.
Let's then come to your 10-point critique of the budget. I want to take up some of the points you make, and I'll go through them one by one. You say, and I'm quoting you, you're speaking first about farmers, farm workers, manual laborers, the self-employed, artisans, and micro, small and medium business persons. Of them, you say, there is absolutely nothing in the budget for these sections. But Mr. Jaitley announced a 24% increase in allocation for agriculture and rural India, which amounts to a total of 1.87 lakh crore. And he said this is the biggest such increase. Are you dismissive of it?
You see, these numbers are really not comparable. You'll have to tell me under which heads it has been increased. You can't look at a number like 24% and say it's an increase. This is a contractionary budget. In terms of total expenditure as a percentage of GDP, 2017-18% is less than 2016-17. I can't remember any recent year where the next year's budget spends or intends to spend as a percentage of GDP less than what you spent in the current year. Overall budget is contractionary. Therefore, unless you go headwise, major headwise, minor headwise, you can't come to any conclusion about allocations.
So this specific claim of a 24% increase, which was made by Mr. Jaitley in his budget, but presumably compiling together a whole lot of different heads, is actually you're suggesting a form of sleight of hand.
Well, there were other sleights of hand. For example, last year, what did they do? They shifted the interest payment on agricultural loans into agriculture. That should have been in the Department of Financial Services.
And they could have done something similar this time
I
around.
don't know. We'll have to look at it more closely. More closely, we have to look at the expenditure budget to look at it more closely.
What about the specific things that he's done for agriculture? He's talked of a 10 lakh crore allocation for credit, which is the highest ever.
It will always be the highest ever. I started it. Year after year, it will be a higher number.
So every finance minister makes that claim.
Every finance minister, including yours truly, made that claim.
So there's
for that year, it will be higher.
So there's nothing impressive about
Last
the
year
claim.
was 9 lakhs. This year is 10 lakhs. Next year will be 11.5 lakhs.
But what about not just that 10 lakh allocation in the way of credit? There's coverage under crop insurance to be increased to 40%, denotify perishables from APMC.
Shall we take crop insurance?
I mean, what I'm saying is, taken together, along with a modern law for contract farming, increasing allocation for irrigation, higher funding for the National Rural Livelihood Mission, doesn't that together suggest he's actually done a lot for agriculture?
No. I'll take crop insurance. We are asking, what are you providing for my son's marriage, my daughter's marriage, my son's education? He says, no, I'm providing for your funeral expenses. Crop insurance kicks in when the crop has failed. So enlarging coverage of crop insurance is good, but that's not boosting agriculture.
And to present it as if it was is another sleight of hand.
No, they've covered 30% of cropped area. Next year they want to cover 40%. Next year they want to cover 50%. But that will always be so. If you've already covered 30%, whatever you do will increase the coverage, isn't it?
All right. Another area where you said the budget had done absolutely nothing was for small and medium business persons. Now, Mr. Jaitley has announced a cut in corporate tax from 30 to 25% for small and medium enterprises, whilst retaining intact their deductions. Surely that is a big fillip for these businessmen.
Now, that's a completely false picture. The Bharatiya Mazdoor Sangh has criticized it. See, I have written my column, I've explained it. There are only 285,000 SMEs which are organized as companies. So all the small and medium enterprises which are either proprietorships or partnerships are left out. They are the vast number. Overwhelming majority are proprietorships and partnerships.
A very small number qualify for this.
And out of the 285,000 who pay taxes, the rest don't even pay taxes. If you're not paying taxes, a cut in income tax rate, if you're incurring losses, a cut in income tax rates means nothing. 285,000 is what qualifies. And then he said 96% of that will benefit, which means he's benefiting 270,000 small and medium enterprises which are organized as companies. It's a very, very small number counting the total number of small and medium enterprises in this country.
You're also suggesting that the presentation of what he did made the impact look far bigger than it actually is.
But we have analyzed it and there's no answer to that analysis.
Now, you also, in that 10-point critique, were skeptical, if not downright dismissive, of the efforts Mr. Jaitley has made to increase employment. In fact, you said nothing meaningful has been done. But let me put to you 3 things that he has done, which he believes will give a considerable boost to employment. One, the cut in corporate tax for small and medium enterprises, which hopefully will make those that benefit more profitable and therefore they'll employ more. Secondly, the extension of the fixed employment term scheme that applies at the moment to textiles, to clothing and to leather. And thirdly, the 3.96 lakh investment in infrastructure, and in particular with emphasis on housing. Surely together those 3 give a huge fillip to employment.
But he said the same thing last year also. The allocation to housing, The allocation to rural infrastructure was, according to some, quite impressive last year. But on the ground, where are the jobs? Look at the Labour Bureau's numbers. I would have liked the finance minister to take the Labour Bureau's numbers and either accept them and then deal with it or question it. The Labour Bureau's numbers show that you are creating something like 150,000 jobs a year, whereas you promised 2 crore jobs a year. Forget 2 crore. You have to create at least 1 million jobs a month, isn't it?
And that's nowhere near happening.
Nowhere near happening. It won't happen. Demonetization has killed whatever opportunity there was to expand the economy over the next 2 years.
So your real critique about job creation is that the steps that he claims will create jobs are actually steps similar to what he did last year. They didn't work last year. They're not going to work this year.
These are simply announcements, you see. They have to be translated on the ground. If today there's been job contraction, in the 8 core sectors, there's a negative growth of jobs. This is the formal sector. If the formal sector is so badly affected, you can imagine how the informal sector is affected.
So to sum up this bit, what you're saying is that although he's made this huge claim of having put in a lot of money into agriculture and farms and rural India, actually it's a combination of different heads, and unless he's specific about what's gone where, it's a sort of sleight of hand because you don't know farmers are benefiting. And when it comes to jobs, he's actually repeating what he did last year. It didn't work last year. It's not likely to work this year. And therefore, both of those are claims that you do not accept as established and concrete, effective ways of tackling these issues.
I had suggested an alternative in a pre-budget article. I said, listen, there is this project monitoring group. There are stalled projects where several thousand crores has already been sunk. Get them going. Now tell me, the last time we heard from the project monitoring group was when the earlier director, who then became coal secretary, now school education secretary, Anil Swarup, was heading the PMG. I have not heard from the PMG over the last 12 months. Stall projects are stalled. I said pick up 50 stall projects and decide to unblock them so that they can go into what we call commercial operation date. That would have given jobs.
Now, on the issue of fiscal responsibility, which is another one of the points you were very critical, you say the government has discarded fiscal prudence. But the truth is Mr. Jaitley has reduced the 3.5% fiscal deficit to 3.2%. And this means that by 2018, he would have reduced the 4.6% you left by almost 1.5%.
But you forget that in 2007-8, in my first stint in UPA, I had brought the fiscal deficit down to below 3%. And the promise was we will never exceed 3%. Then came the international financial crisis. My successor had to necessarily expand the spending. We burst the fiscal deficit ceiling. I was left with 5.7, and I had 2 budgets, a main budget and an interim budget. In those 2 years, I reduced it to 4.7, and I had given a Vijay Kelkar drafted roadmap where he should have brought to 3% in 2016-17. He took the escape clause in the first year. He's taken the escape clause in the third year. I mean, in 4 budgets, in 3 years, if you invoke the escape clause twice, what is your commitment to fiscal prudence?
You know what he says? He says that the quality of his fiscal deficit is infinitely better than the quality of the fiscal deficit cuts you made and your successor made in your time. He points out that your fiscal deficit cuts were made on the basis of A, postponing repayments and refunds, secondly, not making payments, and thirdly, savage expenditure cuts. He says his quality is much better because in many instances, like Enrega, he's actually exceeded budget estimates and still achieved the fiscal deficit.
No, he has not achieved the fiscal deficit. Please remember, 2015-16, the fiscal deficit should have been 3.6. He kept it at 3.9. That is the first time he invoked the exception. The CNAG has now reported it is not 3.9, it was 4.31. A terrible slippage. This year when he says 3.2, we'll have to wait to see what the actuals are. I wish him good luck. But the point is, thanks to NDA, we are 2 years behind the original target date for achieving 3%, number one. Number two, as I said, he has contracted the total expenditure of the government. This is the first time in my memory where government contracts in order to achieve a target which is quite not the target.
I hear the point you're making. And in your critique, you actually said that international analysts would not look kindly on this sort of fiscal disregard. But the truth is that people like William Foster, Vice President of Moody's, has praised his fiscal handling in the Indian Express, called Smartja in the Business Standard.
But Moody's is unwilling to improve our rating, kept it just below the investment grade.
And that's the test of the pudding.
That is the test. He can make statements, but please ask Moody's to upgrade India.
All right, let's come to something else. Again, I'm going back to that 10-point critique. You say, and I'm quoting you once again, there is absolutely nothing in the budget in terms of either new strategy or policy measures to revive private investment. And here, many people would agree with your criticism. So my question is, if you had been in Mr. Jaitley's shoes, what would you have done?
Oh, I would have cut indirect taxes. That's the best way to boost aggregate demand. 9 out of 10 economists will tell you to do that.
But could he do it with GST just around the corner?
He should have done it. GST is not around the corner. GST is not coming anywhere before October 1. The budget was presented on February 1. Indirect tax cuts come into force immediately, unlike direct tax cuts. He had 8 full months to cut indirect taxes and see the effect of that on the economy. It would have boosted aggregate demand. It would have boosted sales. The top line would have improved. It would have allowed or encouraged people to make new investment, new capacity. The best instrument was to cut indirect taxes. He was dismissive of it. He has not cut any indirect tax, and that, I think, was a terrible mistake.
And this is going to be something that will therefore retard or at least not allow private investment to happen.
There will be no private investment today with such sluggish demand. There's so much slack in existing capacity. Why would anyone invest in creating new capacity?
In which case, what then is your forecast for GDP growth this year? I'm not talking of next.
6.5.
That's
this
yours.
year.
This year.
Yeah. This year, I think, is practically even the economic survey has said so.
6.5 to 6.75.
It said it in a convoluted way. 0.25 to 0.5 deviation from the new normal. What is all that? 7.6 has become 6.5.
But in contrast to the economic survey, and you're correct in saying the economic survey had put the GDP growth for this year between 6.5 and 6.75, but in contrast, Shaktikant Das, the Economic Affairs Secretary, in an interview to The Hindu on the 4th, that's well after the economic survey, said GDP growth this year will be upwards of 7%, and then he adds the northward trajectory will continue for next year and the year after.
He's wrong. He won't be around to answer it next year or the year after.
You mean because he retires in 3 months' time, he can safely make this claim?
Yeah. He also said remonetization is complete. I've just come back from a 500-kilometer road journey in Tamil Nadu. Everywhere I go, they said the ATMs are either dysfunctional or they have no cash.
So
he should come with me. I'll take him along 300 kilometers to show him the ATMs.
I'll come to demonetization in a moment's time.
No, I'm only contrasting statements made by people sitting in Delhi and the reality on the ground.
But coming back to GDP growth, in your 10-point critique of the budget, you said that even the economic survey, which puts it between 6.5 and 6.75 this year, was wrong. You said it will be worse.
Yes.
But you haven't put a figure to it.
6.5.
You agree?
No more than 6.5.
This year, no more than 6.5.
Yes.
All right. Let's come to a point you make not in your 10-point critique, but in the preamble, because I think it's an important comment on the budget. You say the government has retreated from reforms.
Yes.
Why do you not accept the abolition of the FIPB as an important reform?
FIPB abolition is not a reform. Already we have taken that to a point where 90% of all investments are in the automatic route. We started with 30 or 40. It's grown to 90%. When you've reached a point of 90%, whether the FIPB remains or is abolished is inconsequential, be that as it may. For the 5 or 10% that requires approval, you may abolish FIPB, you would have to still put in place somebody, some body or some person to grant approval. So that's not a reform. That's incremental change that happens over a period of time.
So anyone who does regard it as a reform, and several leading industrialists claim that it was an essential reform, if not critical to encouraging investment, you're saying are either exaggerating or they're saying this because they want to be kind to the finance minister.
Well, you can put it whichever way, but it's not reform. What is the reform there? I mean, already 90% are on the automatic route.
Let's then come to something that's attracted a lot of attention, and to be honest, it's got him a fair amount of praise, and that is the reform of political funding.
Yes.
Firstly, he's put a cap of just 2,000 rupees on the amount of donations you can receive in cash from any company or any individual. Is that reduction from 20,000 to 2,000, in your eyes, an effective reform?
I complimented him on reducing from 20,000 to 2,000, but I pointed out that it will not put an end to cash donations, because all that the party has to do is to show 10 donors rather than one donor. In order to complement that reform, what he should have done is put a ceiling on the total amount of money that can be taken by cash. 2,000 per donation can be taken by cash, but overall, no political party should take in any given year cash donation of, say, more than 5 crore or 10 crore. He should have said something like that.
As much as 5 crore, or is that just a figure you're bringing up?
Just a figure. Unless you put that cap, all you've got to do is, instead of making one anonymous donation, you will make it as 10 anonymous donations.
So in the absence of that cap, this will permit cash donations, it will permit a recycling of black money, and the entire purpose is defeated by the absence of the cap.
Just more receipt books have to be printed.
What about the second attempt that he's made, the second way of tackling political funding, which is to come up with these electoral bonds issued by the RBI, which will be sold only for payment in check or digitally, and secondly, they will be credited directly to the authorized accounts of the parties concerned, but the anonymity of the donor will be protected and preserved, which apparently many donors have insisted on. Do you think that is a well-handled scheme?
It's no different from the electoral trust that we introduced. Instead of each business house creating an electoral trust, you are now creating a virtual public electoral trust to which corporates can contribute. Electoral trusts also can only be funded by check or by non-cash payment. So it's no different. I don't criticize it. It's a variation of the electoral trust, and let's see how it works. If it works well, I'm happy.
So of the two measures he's taken with regard to political funding, the first, reducing the cap, is actually going to be ineffective because people will find a way around it.
I think so. I'm afraid it'll turn out so.
And the second, you're saying, is no different to the electoral trust
it's a variation. It's an improvement perhaps, or it's another way of funding through an electoral trust. It's a public electoral trust, that's all.
Let me then come to demonetization.
Yes.
Now, in that budget speech, Mr. Jaitley disclosed that 4 lakh crore had been deposited in 148,000 accounts, in deposits the minimum of which in size is 80 lakhs, but the average is 3.31 crore. That clearly is black money. And doesn't
I don't know. Depends on who deposited.
So do people keep as much as 80 lakhs in their homes or their companies? Because 80 lakhs is a huge amount of money to keep in cash.
Well,
it has to be black money.
I think you should ask this question to Mr. Jaitley. According to returns filed by him before Parliament, he has kept a huge amount of cash, perfectly legitimate.
But
I don't know who's keeping this cash, but if somebody keeps this cash, it's reflected in his income tax return, shown as cash at hand, and if he puts it in the bank, there's nothing wrong with that. But I don't know.
Let me quote to you T.N. Nainan writing in the Business Standard on the 4th. It is all but certain that this represents cash stashed away or cash used in black money transactions. Either way, he says, this is black money unearthed by Notebandi. Nainan is convinced this 4.9 lakh crore is black money.
The proof of the pudding is how many cases end with an assessment order holding this as unaccounted money, which is taxable.
I take your point, but let's break it up for the audience into two stages. In the first instance, if people like Nainan are to be accepted, this 4.9 lakh crore is the unearthing of black money, and it shows that a very sizable amount of black money has been unearthed by demonetization.
You are going from, you are reaching the conclusion first before the facts lead to that conclusion.
In other words, it has to be proven to be black money.
I'll explain it in simple words. You've got a balance sheet, you file an income tax return. I've got a balance sheet, I file an income tax return. If I have cash balance of 3 lakhs and you announce demonetization, I have no option but to deposit the 3 lakhs in the bank. I have no option. I can't do anything else. Likewise, each one has deposited the cash. If he's got a matching cash balance on his balance sheet,
it's not black money.
It's not black money.
But the problem is the size. 80 lakh minimum, 3.3 lakh average, 3.3 crore average.
We don't know. We'll have to look at these averages are all can be quite misleading. We'll have to look at each case. So I'd like to say, all right, take the top 10,000 cases, complete the assessment within a month, and then tell the world, take the top 10,000 cases. Its average is 3.3, you said. So the top must be in the range of 5 crore, 10 crore. Take the top 10,000 cases, complete the assessment by March, and tell us the results.
And you've now touched upon
I wish them well.
You've now touched upon the second problem. How easy will it be to scrutinize these 148,000 accounts, establish conclusively it's black money, so that you can then proceed to tax them and benefit the exchequer? How easy is that second process?
Well, there are about 2.5 lakh crore income tax filers who actually pay some tax, out of which less than 1.5% is taken up here. I'm sure your account is a scrutiny account. Mine is also a scrutiny account. That means about 2 to 2.5 lakh accounts are scrutinized every year, for which the income tax officer has 21 months to complete the scrutiny. Now, he has to scrutinize those accounts, and if he's being asked now to add another, I don't know how many lakhs is
potentially, in fact, going by what Hasmukh Adhya, I believe, has said, 18 lakh accounts have required some form of email questioning. Whether they are scrutinized is another matter.
Those 18 lakh accounts can be scrutinized by the staff, which is why I'm suggesting a practical way. Take the top 10,000 cases, complete the assessment by March, and tell us the result.
And that is the only way to do it.
Well, that's the only way to inspire confidence that we've actually traced black money.
Mr. Chidambaram, let's take a break at that point. When I come back, I want to turn to two very topical subjects. Shashikala taking over as Chief Minister of Tamil Nadu possibly tomorrow morning itself, and allegations raised by the BJP along with allegedly supporting letters that the UPA government was wrongly helping Vijay Mallya. We'll be back in a moment's time for the second part of this interview. See you in a moment's time. Welcome back to a special episode of To The Point. My guest is P. Chidambaram, the former finance minister. In part one, we talked about the budget and demonetization. We turn now to two topical developments. Shashikala becoming Chief Minister of Tamil Nadu possibly tomorrow morning itself, and allegations made by the BJP that the last UPA government wrongly helped Vijay Mallya. Let's come, Mr. Chidambaram, at this point to something that has happened in the last 24 hours. It concerns you in particular. You're a Tamil Nadu resident. You're a senior Tamil Nadu politician. It's been announced that Shashikala will be the next Chief Minister of Tamil Nadu. Some reports say she could be sworn in tomorrow morning. Earlier, she became General Secretary of the AIDMK. Now she's going to become Chief Minister. How do you, as a senior Tamil politician, view the prospect of Shashikala as Chief Minister of your state?
Well, I'm very saddened. It is the right of the AIDMK MLAs to choose their leader. But it is the right of the citizens of Tamil Nadu to question whether the leader chosen by the AIDMK deserves to be Chief Minister. This is the post occupied by Rajaji, Kamaraj,
Anna.
And I cannot imagine how a party wedded to social justice, wedded to social reform, wedded to progressive thought, at least that is the roots of the Dravidian party, can elect a leader whom they have elected and present that leader as a harbinger of change. I think there's a complete disconnect between the AIDMK party MLAs and the people of Tamil Nadu. That disconnect will become more visible as the days roll by. There is deep resentment about the process adopted and about the choice of the person. Only a month ago, they unanimously reposed confidence in Mr. Pannirselvam. Now, what has he done to lose that confidence? Did he violate the constitution? Did he do something illegal? So what is this process they're adopting? This is not like changing your shirt every day. You are making and unmaking chief ministers. And I think the AIADMK should have behaved as a more responsible political party and followed a process which is democratic and acceptable to the people of Tamil Nadu. What they have done, from all reports that I get, is unacceptable to most people in Tamil Nadu.
Now, Shashikala faces 3, possibly 4 cases brought by the Enforcement Directorate. There is also a verdict due from the Supreme Court in the appeal in the disproportionate assets case, and I believe the Supreme Court has said that verdict will be delivered as early as next week. In these circumstances, should she be sworn in?
Well, I think the governor has a discretion to decline to swear in as chief minister.
And if he doesn't exercise that discretion?
Well, it won't be unconstitutional, but it would be a poor exercise of discretion.
So if, as reports say, she's sworn in at 8:45 or 9 a.m. tomorrow, that will be a poor exercise of the governor's discretion.
That's my view.
In other words, a wise governor would exercise his discretion and say to her, let's wait for the Supreme Court verdict to come up, and then if the path is clear, I'll swear you in. But to swear you in with this cloud hanging over you is at least morally and ethically wrong.
Well, I think the governor has a discretion to tell her that under the present circumstances, it'll be difficult for me to swear you in.
And if he doesn't exercise that discretion, would you also be concerned about the quality of his judgment as governor?
We'll wait and see. Why should I comment on a governor before he does anything?
Does Shashikala have the administrative experience to be Chief Minister of Tamil Nadu, not only one of India's largest states, but one of India's economically most successful states?
Well, I don't know her. I've never met her. I don't think there is any evidence of her administrative ability. The AIADMK MLAs have chosen her, and it's their right. Equally, it is my right, like the right of every other Tamil, to question the wisdom of the choice.
Let me put this to you, I'm playing devil's advocate. When Sonia Gandhi first became president of the Congress party, Jyoti Basu famously dismissed her as a mere housewife. She turned out to be one of the most successful presidents of the Congress party, and certainly the longest serving. Is it possible the same could turn out to be true of Shashikala, that we're being dismissive of her, but she could prove to be a superb
I'm not
chief minister?
dismissive of anyone. We are talking not about the general secretary or president of a party. We are talking about the chief minister of a state.
Which is the difference between Sonia as Congress president?
She accepted the responsibility of steering the party, but when another responsibility was offered to her, she declined. If
Not in 99 when she actually wanted the job, but Mulayam Singh didn't support her.
Speculation. This is speculation. She did not accept the offer of Prime Minister when that was available to her, and it was widely known that she could have been sworn in the next day after the CPP meeting. She declined. That will remain to her eternal credit.
Here it seems as if Shashikala has engineered things in such a way to be offered the prize, which she's then gladly accepted. That's how it looks to people.
Those are your words. I'm not concerned about how they took the decision. I'm concerned about the decision taken. I don't think the people of Tamil Nadu will accept this with equanimity.
Now, all afternoon today, there was a press conference held by Apollo Hospital with Richard Beale, the British doctor who attended upon Jayalalitha, present and answering questions. Is the timing of that press conference, just hours before supposedly Jayalalitha is sworn in as Chief Minister, suspicious?
I don't know what he said. I didn't listen to that.
But he went out of his way to assure people that, in fact, the very best of treatment possible was given. There was no question of conspiracy.
Doubt about that. I know Apollo hospitals. 77 days, they did do their best, but the late Chief Minister had multiple problems. And I think despite the best treatment, she passed away.
Richard Beale made it clear at the press conference in no uncertain terms that the press conference was happening at the government's behest. It was happening now because the government had facilitated it. He was there because he had been asked to come. He said that in so many words. Does that suggest that this was deliberately held today to clear the way for Shashikala in some way?
Well, if they wanted to clear a cloud, nothing wrong with that. Because I never believed that there was a cloud of suspicion over Ms. Jayalalitha.
That was just rumor and possibly scandal mongering.
It's a speculation.
One last question on Shashikala. Do you believe Jayalalitha would have wanted Shashikala to succeed as Chief Minister, or would she be disheartened and dismayed?
I don't know. She had, according to medical bulletins, on several of those 77 days, the late Chief Minister was perfectly normal, and she was she had even dictated a speech to be delivered at a Chief Minister's conference. She had given instructions to the officers. So if she wanted to anoint a successor, she could have done it. But
she had the time and she had the ability,
well,
so it seems.
From what the medical bulletins, I'm going by the medical bulletins.
And if she didn't anoint a successor, then one can question whether she would have wanted this successor.
No, it could be that she didn't anticipate that she would pass away. So it's quite possible. Like many people don't leave wills. Why? Because they don't anticipate that they will pass away.
Finally, Mr. Chidambaram, a couple of days ago, the BJP held a press conference. Sambit Patra, their spokesperson, flashed letters where allegedly Vijay Mallya had written to the UPA government asking for favour, asking for support on his problems with various banks. And that support was given. Many people said that, did the UPA act wrongly in helping a man in Vijay Mallya's position?
You see, neither the Prime Minister nor I dealt with any letters. Firstly, the letter to me was not concerning Kingfisher. It concerned USL.
Which is why I'm not raising that letter.
Yeah.
As you pointed out, that was to do with equity,
Yes,
not loans.
not loan.
I'm talking about the letters to Dr. Manmohan Singh asking for help regarding loans.
The Prime Minister of India is not a clerk. The Prime Minister of India is Prime Minister. Hundreds of letters land on his table. These letters are marked to various officers, various departments. Now it is for them to take what is appropriate action. If any one of them has acted inappropriately or illegally, of course it should be investigated. But to say that the letter was addressed to the Prime Minister, therefore it must be that the Prime Minister has taken an action, betrays a complete lack of ignorance of how the Prime Minister's office functions.
I understand your argument perfectly well, but in this instance, as Sambit Patra pointed out, Mr. Kuti, the Prime Minister's Principal Secretary, probably the most senior officer in the Prime Minister's office, actually personally intervened, secured the measure of help that Vijay Mallya wanted.
No such allegations.
Because Vijay Mallya keeps saying he's relieved and pleased. So presumably the work had been done.
All that it says is, the Prime Minister's Principal Secretary was very helpful. He then passed it on or spoke to various departments. Now we don't know.
But when the Prime Minister's Principal Secretary speaks to departments, people think he's acting on the PM's behest and the work gets done.
We don't know whether the work was done.
But Vijay Mallya says he's pleased and relieved.
No, he doesn't say. He's pleased and relieved that the letters were acted upon. We don't know whether the work was done. What work was done? Or did anyone do anything illegal? Nothing is known. The loans were given in 2009. Please understand that. The loan that are under investigation was given in 2009. It so happened that I was not in the finance ministry then, so I can't comment on that.
The question, I suppose, that arouses suspicion is a very simple one. Should someone as senior as the Prime Minister's Principal Secretary, Mr. Kuti, have been intervening personally? If it had been done at a lower level, it would have been ordinary, as Dr. Manmohan Singh said. Why at that level?
You are using loaded words. The Prime Minister's, the correspondence that comes to the Prime Minister is not dealt with by a lower division clerk. The correspondence is indeed dealt with by the Principal Secretary and the Secretary.
But the Principal Secretary makes the phone calls himself?
No, we don't know that. The Principal Secretary then speaks to whoever has to be spoken to take action. It's quite possible the Principal Secretary sent a letter to the Banking Secretary. It's quite possible he sent it to the Industry Secretary. All that the letter says is the Principal Secretary took some action, and I'm very happy. We don't know what action he took. number one. Number two, we don't know whether he did anything illegal. I don't believe he did anything illegal.
And there's no problem with the Principal Secretary taking action himself.
Who else will do it? The Prime Minister can't deal with all those letters. Not even a junior minister can deal with all the letters that land on our tables.
So the fact that the Principal Secretary has to act on a letter to the PM is understandable and
Yes.
natural, not suspicious and out of order.
It's true of every government. In fact, you please ask the present Principal Secretary how many letters come to his table and how does he dispose them off. In fact, if they tell me no letters are received by the Prime Minister's office, that will be a very poor reflection of this government.
So the suspicion in people's eyes that because Mr. Kuti acted, therefore the matter was improperly handled because it was handled at too high a level, that suspicion is mistaken.
Yeah, you create this kind of a cloud, a miasma, and throw words here and there. This is the way government functions. If suppose letters came to me, I mean, I don't read all those letters. It's not humanly possible. Who will mark those letters? My PS will mark the letters to various divisions. Only a few of them will be brought to my notice. And who will mark the Prime Minister's letters? It is the Principal Secretary, and the Secretary will mark those letters. That's the normal way government functions.
So my last question, do you have any regrets or doubts today about the way Vijay Mallya's case, and in particular his appeals for help, were handled by the UP government?
I don't know who handled what. All I know is that when I returned to the Finance Ministry, we had the loans that his dues to the tax departments were mounting. I think we attached his aircraft, the excise department and service department attached some of his properties, and he did come and protest or complain or whatever to various officers. But we said, listen, unless you show your bona fides by paying some amount, these attachments cannot be lifted. That's the only interaction I had with him in the last 2 years of my tenure in the Finance Ministry. But I really don't know how these loans were handled in 2009. Let me tell you, I've said this before, if there was something illegal about the way the loans were handled, it must be investigated. But don't immediately lay it at the door of the Prime Minister of India.
In other words, investigate it, but don't at this moment point fingers as if you are convinced you know that someone's done something wrong. That, if it has happened, will emerge from investigation.
Whatever level, at the bank level, at the branch level, if you investigate. If there's something wrong, you will find, you take action.
UPA would have no problem with a thorough investigation.
In fact, we started the cases against Mr. Mallya. We did the first attachments. We issued the first notices. And this government let him go right under its nose. Why
So your
did they let him
position
go?
is investigate thoroughly.
Yes,
We would be happy for you to
absolutely.
do so, but please do not point fingers
Yes.
before you have any proof to
And
do so.
don't
That is
drag
wrong.
the Prime Minister's office into everything. We don't do that today.
All right, Mr. Chidambaram, a pleasure speaking to you.
Thank you.